Motoring Radio Show, podcasting across iTunes and talkandpower.com.au.
Okay, welcome gentlemen, and thanks for joining us to podcast episode 95 of the Talk and Power podcast. And we have some really special guests with us tonight, Todd. I'm Nick DeChemry, this is Todd Brinkworth, and we have with us, all the way from Street Machine magazine, we have with us brand content director Simon Telford and Street Machine deputy editor Scotty Taylor. Thanks for joining us, guys.
G'day.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, I've got to be honest with you, myself, Todd, and Simon in particular, we've been very, very big fans for many, many years. So much so, I don't know, can you guys actually see that? Look at that.
Sure can. It's a very early edition, that one.
Yeah.
Probably 1983.
What? You're very good, Telfo. Very good. It's from January 83 or December 82. So I just thought, been a big fan, been following it for many, many years. I don't have a van wheels, however. I don't have the van wheels, but anyway, I've got quite a few here. And we'll talk about some of those a bit later.
Classics.
But look, tell us, I mean, Telfo, you kicked off in the early 2000s at Street Machine. You started under the legendary Seto, or Jeff Seddon, as most people know him. Tell us how you got started.
Well, I was out of school. I went into uni and became a high school teacher. Taught English and history, and I always loved Street Machine, but I never dreamed I could work on a car magazine. I thought you had to be like a Formula One driver and an ace engineer, an incredible mechanic to get in. And then I was teaching for a couple of years, and I saw some jobs popping up for different magazines, and I applied for one at the old Zoom magazine and Street Commodores. So got in there, went, yep, see you later teaching. This is more fun. And discovered, it's, you don't have to be a complete genius behind the wheel or behind the spanner. You have to have a bit of an idea, but the most important thing is to be able to write. Because most car guys, you're either one left brain or right brain, and rarely are people both. So it's actually hard to find people who can write and are interested in cars. So and Seto poached me from there. Thank God.
No, that is a great story. And Boris, when we spoke with Boris a few weeks ago, he echoed the same sentiments actually. How about yourself, Scotty? How did you get your start?
Wow, how long have you got? I mean, I can talk about this quite a bit.
As long as we've got plenty of time, Scotty. So you go knock yourself out. It's all good.
Right. I was a kid that grew up in the bush, screwing around with cars and guns and bikes and everything, all the way through the 80s. Reading Street Machine, and like Simon, I had no idea that I could actually do this as a job. So I built my first car at 16, a HQ Ute. Like we had 7 HQs out in the farm. I combined them into one because I said to my parents, can you buy me a car? Well, all the parts are there. Why don't you build one? I'm like, okay, all right. So built this Ute up and then got to the point of almost rego. And Dad said, all right, I'll take a Ute and I'll buy you a Tirana. So my first registered car was a LJ two-door Tirana. So as a Street Machine, fan from way back in the early 80s, I've always been, reading it from cover to cover, every issue, right through. Anyway, as a job, my first major job, I guess, was a telecommunications technician working for Telstra. And so I went through that, did I had 12 years in Telstra, and then got a job with another company, like a big international telecommunications corporation, earning big dollars. And I got interested in the internet and doing my own websites and stuff like that. And then starting doing little how-tos on my own websites. And I knew a few people in the publishing scene, like Jason Gray, who was editor of Street Commodores, and then a job popped up at Zoom and Street Commodores. I went for the job at Zoom, and Simon was actually working there at the time. And are you guys still there?
Yeah, we're here. We're listening. We're enthralled.
Everything's very quiet. I was like, are they still listening?
Maybe we should move as well.
Yeah.
So Simon was there in the interview at the time. So that's when me and Simon first met, actually. I didn't get that job because I wanted a little bit too much. Like I was taking a massive pay cut even to come across. Like I was This is back in the early 2000s, and I was going to lose. When I finally did come across, I lost 27 grand a year in a company card and a fuel card and the whole deal. It was a massive pay cut to get into publishing. Anyway, so I ended up with a job at Street Commodores under Jason Gray, who had, been 2 times horsepower hero champion, all that kind of stuff. Me and Jason used to do karate together back in the, 90s as well. Anyway, that's how I got into Street Commodores. And then I met Simon. Simon left, I guess maybe 6 months. Was it 6 months after I started, Simon?
Something like that, yep.
You went over to Street Machine. And then, the place where Street Commodores and everything came about was this place called Express Publications, and it was a bit of a madhouse. I think me and Simon are 2 of the only guys that walked out there under our own steam. Everyone else pretty much got escorted from the building. It was that sort of place.
Wow.
So I survived there almost 3 years, and I just got to the point where, you know what, one day I'm going to get marched out the door, so I'm going to go under my own power. And I was going to go create car DVDs, because car DVDs were big back in 2005.
Yeah.
Car DVDs were a big thing. So the day I left, that afternoon, Simon rings me, and I'm in the car with my former boss, Jason Gray, is right beside me. Simon's talking to me and going, "What are you doing Monday?" And I'm like, I can't remember to say, but what have you got? So they fling me a VS Senator to the first of the 6-litre HSV Senators had just come out. And they said, "We've got this as a press car. Take a drive, write about it, and, see what you reckon." So I write this story on it. I call it Super Size Me, because, they just upsized the LS V8 in the things. Pumped it in the next day, and Simon rings me and goes, "Well, Seto wants to meet you." So I'd never met Jeff Seddon at that stage.
Yep.
When you meet Seto, all his meetings were pretty much at the pub. So pub lunch in with Seto, and he's like, "Well, we want you to write some stuff for us." And, but at that stage I'd already worked out that I was going to move out of Sydney. I'd been in Sydney for 15 years at that stage, and I was kind of over the place. And we'd already basically sold our house. And I said, "Well, look, I can write freelance for you, but it'll be from a remote location." So we moved down to Albury, Wodonga sort of area. And I freelanced exclusively for Street Machine from there for 8 years. And then that's where I also sort of kicked off my Scotty's Garage YouTube thing. And YouTube, freelancing was a good deal, but YouTube was coming on strong, and we were paying our home loan off with YouTube earnings.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then things being what they are, Bauer Media bought out ACP magazines and moved all the motoring titles to Melbourne. And when I heard they were all going to Melbourne, I said to my wife, "There's going to be a job offer here. How do you feel about moving to Melbourne?" And I don't know if Simon even knows all this stuff. I predicted this stuff way early. And I said, "There's going to be a job offer here. How do you feel about moving to Melbourne?" And she said, "I'm in." And within a week or week and a half, Simon rings me and goes, "How do you feel about moving to Melbourne?" I said, "Done, we're in." So, moved to Melbourne, and full-time with Street Machine since then. That was 2013, October 2013, and we've been down here 7 years now. And I love Melbourne. I mean, Melbourne is a great place, a great car community.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
the guys are so into it down here. Like, Sydney was good, and Sydney has a great car scene, don't get me wrong. But Melbourne, they are insane. They will go out at the drop of it could be pissing rain. They'll be out there in the cars. It'll be freezing cold and 3 degrees outside. They'll be out parked, like 500 cars parked out somewhere, and, people everywhere. They love going to events. So Melbourne people are insane when it comes to car stuff and just everything, actually. I mean, they used to go into football in the freezing rain and cold and, So, yeah. So anyway, that's how I got into Street Machine.
It's a very interesting story, and it's something that we like to ask all of our guests how they got started. For those that are listening to our podcast or watching this video, can you explain to the uninitiated? I think this magazine here, this one actually is from April, May of 1984. That's actually one of my favourites. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
Yeah. That,
Guys putting the engine in the car.
yeah. That to me, that magazine cover to me typifies Street Machine magazine. Can you explain to the uninitiated then, Street Machine, you've been around since 1981. It's arguably one of the longest standing publications in Australian media history. Can you explain to those that are listening for the first time exactly what Street Machine magazine is?
Well, Street Machine's about having fun with cars, and specifically Aussie and American cars. But it's not just, counting rivets or that kind of thing. It's about all the fun around them and the people behind them, and exposing all the amazing people who are super talented. It might just be some guy living in the bush who builds a super fast car or an amazing custom car. And, they don't get much exposure and limelight, and it's our job to show it off to the world. I guess the closest thing that people might know these days is Grand Designs. So that TV show where the guy, they want to build a big crazy house and he follows them through the build and all the trials and tribulations and the ups and downs. We're just that, except for cars.
Yeah. I completely agree. And as I said, that to me, I actually spent most of the last week going through my old editions, and they're not even at my house. They're at my mum and dad's house because I haven't given them over. And I've only left home 15 years ago. But anyway, and that was one of the ones when I was going through. I said, I've got to take that one with me and show the guys that, because to me, that is what typifies Street Machine. The other cover I want to share with you is actually that one there that I showed you before as well. Simon, that is, found that one quite interesting. That would have been one of the, especially back in that day, one of the only magazines that didn't have a Ford or a Holden on the front of it. So that one's actually got a Datsun and a Chrysler. So can you talk us through, like, the perception has been that Street Machine is generally GM or Ford, but that's not always the case, is it?
No, definitely not. And people, they say, you should do more 4 cylinders or rotaries. Well, back in the day, people forget, in 84, 85, 86, we featured a lot of, before there was magazines like Fast Fours and Rotaries, we were featuring those cars and, test driving new Courtiers and stuff like that when they came out. So there's always been that broad church, but, V8s and 6s are what we're about. But we've always been open to Escorts and Geminis and, things like that. And of course, back in the day, we had a couple of Valiants on the cover, and then we had about 30 years off before we put another Valiant on the cover. But since then, we've had a few, and maybe even in the last couple of years, we've had a couple.
That particular magazine I just showed you, that actually you test drove Mitsubishi Colt.
Yeah, there you
go.
It's a Mitsubishi Colt.
Colt 45, was it?
Well, you got to think, back then, people thought petrol was going to run out in the next couple of years. Mad Max was probably going to happen for real. V8s were dying. Like, Ford had stopped putting V8s in Falcons in 1982 or so. Holden, almost stopped putting them in Commodores until we had the V8s to 98 campaign. So they had to look at turbo Colts and ET turbos and Courtiers because there may not have been V8s to go on with.
Yeah.
How big were Courtiers back in the 80s? Like 84, 85. Mitsubishi Courtiers were just insane. Like, the cop cars, the cops were using them as, pursuit cars and stuff like that, So you see one, like, you don't see them anymore, and when you do see one, you go, oh, Courtier, man, I haven't seen one of them in a while. Same with Starions too.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, guys, talk us through then, I guess, the 80s, where the magazine goes from its inaugural editor, Jeff Paradise. He hands over to Phil Scott. And Phil, like, at this stage, the magazine is really hoiking along at this point. And you subscribe, you're actually starting to outsell Will's magazine, which I think is an amazing feat, really. Back in the day, you actually gave away on two occasions, an A9X Tirana and an XY GT. HO, Phase 3, was that correct?
Gave away HQ for You, which is our first big giveaway. The HQ Monaro, and then a A9X with, like, I think it had 19 miles on the clock when we gave it away. And I think that car is in Western Australia now.
Okay.
GTHO, they put a fuel-injected 5-litre in an XF Falcon. I know where that car is. And a whole ton of cars.
Sony Scorcher.
Oh, that was much later, yeah. I mean, this is the day, we had cigarette advertising. So
Yeah.
they only did 9 issues a year back then.
Yeah.
Because Jeff Paradise, apparently, when they said, why don't we do 12? The management said, why don't we do 12? He thought, I don't want to, for the money I'm getting, I don't want to do 12. I just want to do 9. So he told them, there's not enough cars out there. And that's why they did 9 for years and years and years.
Yeah, okay. No, I think it's back in the day. Like I saw some figures on a website. I don't know if it's reputable enough, but yeah, outsold wheels for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a couple of sorry.
I was saying, following on from that, Nick was saying it has sort of a lot of issues. I think I started reading it back in the late 80s, and I still have a few kicking around at home. And I know I'm primarily a 4-cylinder person, but I always have a special place for a lot of street machine sort of issues in my my collection. One thing for me, though, was I really thoroughly enjoyed when you guys started covering a bit more of summer nats. Especially over here, a few of my mates and I, we were young. It was one day we'll go to summer nats. I haven't quite made it yet. I came very close, but one day I'm going to make it over there. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
So Street Machine was involved sponsoring the Street Machine Nationals in the sort of mid 80s when it was run by the Street Machine Federation. Then Chick Henry decided to take it pro and make summer nats, and we helped fund the burnout pad. So we helped get it off the ground and have been the naming rights sponsor ever since. And love summer nats, and formative part of my childhood is being standing on Northbourne Avenue and watching these cars go past with these insane people, all over the shop. It's that certainly had an effect on my small brain when I was a teenager.
Yeah, but tell us, guys. I mean, that you're the name. When we say summer nats, we think Street Machine. When we say Street Machine, invariably we also think summer nats. So the brand association there is really tight now, and I think your association is from back in 1988, the second event.
The first event, yep.
Oh,
no,
first one.
From the very first event, like we funded that burnout pad.
Yeah.
So they could do, prior to that, they did the burnout comp just on a piece of road within Natex, and then we put in the money for the burnout pad and got it off the ground, and the whole thing professionalized. And they started doing I think they'd already started doing the VHS tapes, but that was a massive thing. The brute horsepower. Don't know if they made their way to Western Australia, but most video shops over this side had a very well-worn copy of brute horsepower 1 to.
Yeah, no, that was available here as well.
I remember it as well.
Yeah, that was certainly available here. Yeah.
Always burnouts and boobs as well.
Yep. Yeah, that made it here too. Don't worry about that.
I bet.
Well,
people still think that Street Machine owns summer nats and have for a long time. It's weird, you talk to people and like, oh, you guys should change this and change that. I'm like, it's not our show. What are you talking about? It's like they think Street Machine owns summer nats and always has, but it's never been the case. But again, as a country kid, I used to read Street Machine, looking at summer nats and going, oh my God, this is amazing. And when I finally, was old enough to get up and have my own cars and stuff and get down there, I got down there straight away. I did 7, as in, I think the first one was 7, the year of the riot, I think it was. And then I've done 25 of them consecutively since then.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's incredible. That is a good effort. Well, just changing gear a little bit, you talked about burnouts and blowers, burnouts and boobs. I want to talk about, let's go back to August of 2000. And at the time, he did something a little bit different. He was tipping his toe in the water, so to speak. We're putting girls on the front cover of Street Machine. This actual edition, I ended up with the wrong one, but anyway, that's the one I ended up with. But talk us through that August 2000 edition, because that was one of the only, or the first edition, from my understanding, that had a different front cover. It had you had two front covers, and Seto was basically a test. We had Imogen Bailey with Jim Rowley's Commodore on one cover, and we had just the plain Commodore, or sorry, no plain Commodore, but just the plain cover with Jim Rowley's Commodore on its own on another. Can you talk us through that? What was, how, I mean, progressing on from that, how did that go?
Yeah. I guess in the early days of Street Machine, they mucked around with having girls on the cover here and there, but it was, not something that really stuck. And they didn't have a lot of budget back then either. So in the early 2000s, there was the era of the lad mags. So you had FHM and Ralph. So Seto was the founding editor of Ralph. He was the guy that started that magazine up. So he came from that, he'd worked in motorcycle magazines and then went to Ralph. And he'd always used Street Machine as his template with other magazines, like, I'm going to do it the way they do it. And then he finally ended up being the editor of Street Machine. And he had this Ralph experience. But, it's a big investment every month to have a girl on the cover. And he knew from Ralph that if he had the right girl, the sales went up. And it was probably could have been a worthwhile investment. But, hair, makeup, talent fees, photography, and of course, working with models and cars is tricky. Yep. Like, it doesn't always come off. So I thought, okay, before we dive into this and commit to it, let's run a test. And we'll send, say, half the country, maybe Queensland and New South Wales can get just the car, and the rest of the country can get Imogen and the car. And the result was zero difference. It didn't make any difference at all.
Wow.
So the same amount of people bought it no matter what. So there's no point investing the money in cover girls. That said, for a long time, every February when we had the Summer Nats report, we'd put Miss Summer Nats on the cover.
Yep.
As part of, to promote that part of Summer Nats, and yeah, that was a good thing for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not like they picked an ugly girl either. I mean, Imogen back then, I mean, she's still attractive, but she was mega hot. Like, you couldn't have picked a better girl for the cover.
I think I'll share right now.
I was just trying to fix through
somewhere around here, but yeah, she was amazing. So yeah, it's not like they picked a bad girl or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, all right.
It was a cutie.
It was at the height of her powers, no doubt, back in 2000, I remember, and she was starting to get some acting gigs after that as well. So, yeah, but I remember
she was involved in Hot Fours too. She did a lot of Hot Fours covers too.
That's right, yeah.
In that time.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Scotty, I got another one. I've got one for you now. When I say drag challenge, that's kind of your thing in my view. Anyway, you're the front man for drag challenge. That's starting to become a huge draw card across the nation, in my view. Once this COVID's gone past and we're finished through COVID-19, what are some of the future plans you've got lined up for Drag Challenge?
Well, we've got Drag Challenge weekend coming up in Queensland end of November. It's 27th to 29th of November. So we're doing a Drag Challenge Queensland weekend event. So just a 3-dayer.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're hoping the borders between Queensland and New South Wales will be open by then. So and New South Wales people seem pretty pumped to get up to that, and hopefully, maybe we'll get some from South Australia and that as well. Victoria, we're screwed. We're not going to make it. So, but we've got big plans. Actually, we've got a few things lined up. I don't know how many I can talk about with the box right there.
That's all right.
But let's talk about actually, Drag Challenge. So like I said before, I started full time with Street Machine October 2013, and I said to Simon, we need to do our own version of Drag Week. Like, this needs to happen. And Simon's gone, all right, make it happen, plan it out, let me know how much it's going to cost and whatever. You make it happen, and we'll, if it looks like the money works, we'll do it, So I think we did our first one, was it April 2014, Simon, something like that?
No, it was because we just, Chris Thorogood and
right.
I had just driven to the middle of Outback, New South Wales, to give out the Street Machine the Year Trophy, which is generally in October or November.
Yeah.
Then we drove back from there, got caught in a snowstorm. We had to sleep in the ute because we got snowed out, and rocked up at Sydney Dragway, ready for the first ever drag challenge, which was
So
kind of a under the radar type event. We didn't publicise it. We weren't sure how it was going to go with the cops. Everybody was, the reason nobody's ever done this before is it was like, oh, you'll get shut down, the cops will shut you down. So we just put out the word quietly, and we got 18 people from Victoria and New South Wales. And I think we had a guy who drove down from Cairns in his Centura.
Yep.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah, like a Lexus V8 Harrop supercharged Centura, drove it down from Cairns, did drag challenge, then went and did a burnout comp, I think, that year, and then drove it home like a madman. A total legend.
It was like 9,500 Ks or something, I think he did total that trip. And like did burnout comps, did drag challenge, did the whole thing. And it was, we ran it kind of weird in that first time. That it was actually very much like the first Hot Rod Drag Week, in that the first Hot Rod Drag Week started at one place and finished at another place. So everyone had to drive back to their tow vehicles, at the end of it. And we did the same thing. We started in Sydney, ended up at Heathcote, and, all the guys that left their gear at, Sydney had to drive all the way back to Sydney, so all the Queenslanders, I mean, there was only, I think Terry and Brenton were the Queenslanders, right. But, a lot of the Sydney people had to drive, they did the entire event and then had to drive all the way back to Sydney, straight after it. So, instead of it just being like a 1,000 K journey, it ended up being, 2,200 Ks, I think most of them did, that first year. And as Simon said, everyone told us it was never going to happen. It was always going to be shut down. You won't do Drag Week in Australia. I even talked to David Freiberger about this at Drag Week in 2015, and I mentioned to him that we did our own drag, and he said, "You can't do it in Australia. You haven't got enough tracks." I said, "Dude, we've already done it, And then they kind of discovered that, we were doing our own thing, and they've been actually, quite supportive of us, doing our own version of Drag Week. They were actually very happy we didn't call it Drag Week. But they've been quite supporters, and they're very happy to have us at Drag Week when we go over there and cover the event for Australia. So, And
Hot Rod Magazine have been out here to cover our event as well, which is
okay. But the other thing I want to talk about in terms of Drag Challenge and Drag Week, I guess, I know it's hard on the competitors. It's hell. I mean, it's a tough 3, 4, 5 days, 6 days. But even for you guys as well, I mean, we've spoken with Luke Newhoff before on the podcast, and it is one hell of so you're filming during the day or getting content, I guess. And then at night, when you're traveling to the next track, you're on the laptop, or Luke's on the laptop, or whoever's on the laptop, cutting up video, putting the soundtrack over it, getting all the audio in as well. It's a massive task, because I'm sitting there the next day watching the video, and it's only from the previous day, which I think is amazing.
I don't know how we do it. Luke is amazing. Luke and Matt Reiki are two of our main video guys over the years, and I don't know how they do it. They're just Luke actually did a road trip with Mark Arblaster across America. They started in Vegas. Drove in Mark's hardtop all the way to the start of Drag Week. Luke's sitting in the back, full roll cage, editing the videos in a 1,000 horsepower Valiant with no carpet in it, in 45 degrees heat, editing this video, and it's amazing. It's just, they're such talented guys and so dedicated. But we've kind of wised up a bit. We just relied on our youthful energy the first few years, but the last couple of years we've got a motorhome, so I can be like Clark Griswold and drive the car, and the photographers and the video guys are in the back editing away, and that's improved things a little bit.
I still don't think it's easy,
the guy we hired the motorhome off last time, he had a GPS tracker in it, and he's watching it to make sure you don't speed or you don't go to somewhere you said you weren't going to go, and he was freaking out because we're barreling along at 130 at 3 a.m, and he's like, "My beautiful motorhome is going to get wrecked. They're going to hit a kangaroo." But that's what you need to do to get it done.
Yeah. But I love that product. I really do, and I think it's a testament to your team as well. I really do. I enjoy the week when you're doing a drag challenge, and there's a lot of views, and we really appreciate the hard work you guys go to. One of the things that as well, I guess, while we're here, Scotty, this is probably your thing, the Carnage product. Let's talk about the Carnage, the product itself. And I'm really, really interested in this. Boris tells us in the podcast we did with him, it looks like a pretty elaborate production. Like my view of it was that you had about 10 guys behind the camera doing all this. But that's actually not the case, is it? It's just yourself and Kian. Is that right?
Right. It's me and Kian at most of the time. Like, obviously, during these last, 8 weeks of lockdown or whatever, I've been locked here in the shed, basically, with the Valiant and just trying to pump out content by myself. So I'm trying to film and edit and do everything work on the car right here. But even when we're in the workshop, it's just me and Kian most of the time. Occasionally, we get one of our video crew in to help, but most of the time they're shooting TV shows and stuff like that, so they haven't really got the time to come in and film us. So, yeah, most of the time it's just me and Kian. I'd like to get Kian in front of the camera more, but he's got to be there holding the camera while I'm doing stuff. And he's a good kid. He's learning, and he's got pretty good car knowledge anyway. Yeah. I'd love to get him more in front of the camera and doing more with the car, and I'm trying to teach him stuff along the way as well. But we got some good cars, and I miss my babies. I want to go back to the shed and work on some of these cars. Like
that's the thing.
We've got Telfo. The Telfo is just waiting for a transmission. Simon's actually building us a transmission for the Telfo. So,
okay.
And I can't wait till we get that together. MX-5's got a new green top in it, and we just put the turbo from Turbo Taxi on it, so it's going to make some pretty good horsepower. Okay. I'm just waiting for a drag strip to open up so we can take the MX-5 down it with the Bauer in it.
Yeah. Yep.
That'll be insane. Yeah.
So tell us, Scotty, then, or Telfo, who comes up with the ideas? Because when I look at the Carnage product, I think most of those products, 90% of those products that you've done or built over the period, they're tangible products for the masses, aren't they? They're not just like things left of field that we see on roadkill that are probably arguably, I don't think I'll ever do that. You know what I mean? The stuff that you guys are actually doing, in particular, Rust-Oleum, the Valiant. That one to me strikes a bit of a chord because I've got an old Falcon myself, and a lot of the work that you're doing on that car I probably couldn't do, but it's someone that was a little bit more mechanically minded than myself could probably have a crack at what you're doing there. So how do you come up with these ideas?
Do you want me to take that one, Simon? I will let you do. I'd say it's half planning, but half it's just like normal. It is just like normal life. We're just a few goons who are making this up as we go along, and shit goes wrong, and things don't turn out the way you plan them, and it is. It's not a kind of car show where it's scripted and there's drama and we have arguments between Scotty and Kian and Telfo. We do have arguments, but they're not scripted. They just happen. Yeah. Mostly off camera, and it just things work out and shit doesn't always go the way you want it to go. And cars always have more rust in them than you think they're going to go, and engines always go the best before they blow up. Yeah. And so it's not highly planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we kicked off Carnage, it all started me and Telf having kebabs at lunch, basically, souvlaki's in Oakley, at lunchtime. And he was keen to us to start doing some video stuff, like car builds and that. And, I come up with the name Carnage. And our first idea, I said, well, why don't we do something that's kind of iconic, Melbourne, get a taxi, turbocharge it. And that's how Turbo Taxi come about. So it was like, we'll turbocharge a taxi, keep it on LPG. I talked to Jason at Tunnel Vision and he said, yeah, it's possible. And so, we did this taxi over a couple like the first 4 episodes of Carnage were all Turbo Taxi, and it was just a struggle. And it was a struggle for me, actually, because I'd been off the spanners for a couple of years, to be honest. I hadn't touched the car seriously in that way for probably 3 years, and it really shows in those early couple videos that I was like, and certainly nothing as late model as an FG Falcon, you know. And I was like, I struggled. It took me 3 days to do the first engine swap in that taxi. And it was just, oh my God, it was so painful. I'm like, there's so many wires. I'm used to working on these Valiants, you know, so many wires and so many things going on. So anyway, we did Turbo Taxi, and that, you know, that was very well received. We had this crazy idea about doing a Mazda. We were going to do a Mazda 121 bubble car with an LS in it as a burnout car. And we kind of promised we're going to take this thing to Red Centre Nats. And it got 3 months out from Red Centre Nats, and we still hadn't bought a car. It still hadn't started anything. And I said it to, and this, I was scrolling through Grays Online, and I just went, this MX-5, this beaten up MX-5 popped up. I said to Telf, we should buy this. This thing is amazing. We should get it. It's going to be cheap as shit. Let's buy it. And it's already rear-wheel drive, so it'll be easy to do this conversion and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, guys have been putting LSs into MX-5s already. So, yeah, it should be fun. So we Telf buys the thing. We peer pressure Telf into buying it that night online. And no one had seen the car. No one had actually physically seen the car. He just bought it online, $1,700, I think it was, which was pretty cheap for an MX-5, but it was beaten up, and it was moldy, and I think it had been underwater at some point. It wasn't a very good car. And then we got, you know, a few guys to, like, All Race Fabrications helped us out with tubbing it and putting some frame rails in it, doing the engine plates for the LS. Johnny Pillar helped us out with the LS build. We supplied him all the parts, and then he helped put it all together. And you know, GCG turbos, you know, supplied us a couple of turbos, and Plasma Man gave us an intake, and, you know, it all come about in it was the last 12 days. The car was a bare shell, and then 12 days of just hectic build. We got this thing together. 3 o'clock in the morning, me and Telf leave Melbourne and drive 28 hours straight to Red Centre Nats. We just shift drove the entire way. Someone slept, someone drove, someone slept, someone drove. We pretty much didn't talk to each other the entire trip, because it was one sleeping, one driving. And it was like 28 hours straight just to make it there in time.
That's
I
incredible.
had the first shift. So I went to the servo, I got some Nodos, and I got some Coke, because we've been having late nights in the lead up to this. So I had my Nodos, had my Coke, and I'm driving along, and we get over the gateway, and I say to Scotty, I don't think this stuff is working. I'm really sleepy. Maybe you'll have to drive. And he goes, you have not shut up since we left. You have been talking a mile a minute since we pulled out of the driveway. I went, oh, okay. Maybe I'll pull over. And what made it all this harder is we didn't have a workshop at that point. So it was only the kindness of these other people that helped us.
MBW, of course,
the guys at MBW who let us, gave us the run of their workshop and gave us a heap of help. And without those guys, we certainly wouldn't have got that project done, or some of our other projects. So big thanks to them and everybody who we flew down Ian Kelly down to help us, give us a chop out. Somehow we made, and somehow when we got it to Red Centre Nats, it passed scrutineering, because the whole point of Red Centre Nats is you can drive these cars in the street. So we had this car, the bonnet. I don't know if you've seen the bonnet. There is that much gap and about that much bonnet.
Yeah.
Turbos at the bonnet, and they let us drive it around Alice Springs. They let us drag race it, and the thing was like finished in the car park, you know.
The story of the bonnet was, I wasn't even going to put a bonnet on this car, actually, because it was, like I said, we left at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was midnight, I think, and or past midnight. And I said to Telf, we haven't got time to do a bonnet for this thing. We need to get on the road. So we ring up the Summonats guys who are already up there. They're at the casino at past midnight. And I said, dude, do we need a bonnet for this thing? Look, I've got the Department of Transport person right beside me. Yes, you got to make your best effort. I'm like, all right, fine. So we got the Mazda bonnet, and I cut the entire guts out of it. It had like 3 inches around the entire bonnet, and the rest of it was gone. The entire centre section was gone. So I'd cut it out. I sent him a photo of me holding this. It was like a piece of bread that you'd cut the entire centre out. Right, there's your bonnet. It's on the car. We're coming. And, you know, like I said, we were on the road. We hit the servo, bought a heap of E85 and just drove 28 hours straight. And just, yeah, and we rocked up and they looked at it and they were like, oh, my God, are we actually going to let this thing on the street? They actually said to us, you guys are the new standard of, like, this is the limit. You know, last year, Mad Sam was the limit last year. This year, it's you guys. We don't go any further past this. So, and that car was amazing. We took it down the drag strip and, you know, had a blast. It didn't, like, we had heaps of, you know, just little build issues, as you do with new cars. The wastegates were kind of at the wrong angle, so they weren't working properly. So we had to take the wastegates completely off because they weren't. With the wastegates on, it was boosting too high. So with wastegates off, no wastegates, just open ports before the turbos, it was making 10 pounds a boost. So, yeah, venting straight the atmosphere. And, you know, we took it out, ran low 11s and, you know, had fun. And then, you know, the boys, I went to the States a couple of years later and they took it while I went to the States and they ran 990 with it. Like the car's gone 9s. Yeah. You know, so.
The most reliable part of that whole car is the all-fast torque converter. And
there you go.
And power glide.
Transmission's been amazing.
Been the only part of the car that, you know, I shouldn't say that.
No,
definitely the best part of the car.
The transmission has never come out of that car. Like even when I did the Bauer conversion, I left it bolted in and just put the Bauer up to the front with a new bell housing. The transmission's never come out of the car. Pretty much everything else has been changed in that car. The transmission has never been replaced. And your son did an amazing job on that. That was, yeah.
Because it has copter pounding, not just drags, like our friend Bubba has drifted it around Simmons Plains, and he does not have much mechanical sympathy.
Yeah.
So it's done very well to hold up.
If you haven't seen that video, you need to watch it. You need to watch Bubba linking corners with that. Because the car's an 89-inch wheelbase, something like that. It's like it's got a shorter wheelbase. Like as I said, we're going to build a 121. A 121 has a longer wheelbase than a Mazda MX-5. It is.
Yeah.
It has a very short wheelbase, and that car is very easy to get wrong. And Bubba was up there linking corners with this thing, just crazy, crank sideways with it, like just, you know, I think it was making 500 horses at the tyres at that stage, and he's just got it lit up going around Simmons Plains, which has some very, very tight bends, and just you have it sideways up under the pedestrian bridge, and you're just like, we're going to die, but it was so much fun.
That is the essence of Carnage, isn't it? I mean, that's what I like about the product itself, Carnage, and that's what I think attracts us viewers to it, is the fact that it is raw, it's not scripted, and some of these projects that you do I view as tangible. You know, I don't think they're silly or unrealistic projects. So you know that's what certainly myself. That's what I like about the product.
Yeah, I was about to add. My mates have actually commented to me. I was saying, I'm talking to Street Machine guys tonight. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, I am. But anyway, they've learned stuff about building XR6 Falcons. Like they've sort of watched your videos and gone, oh, wow, Scotty's right.
Yep.
And done stuff. Also, the MX5 Club at WA, 50-50 on the MX5, all right? Like, I've got some good friends in the MX5 Club, and you got 50-50, so I'm pretty impressed with that. But
it's pretty good odds.
Yeah, but I mean, while we're talking about the Carnage product and that, Street Machines seem to sort of, well, I almost say hit a gold mine in the digital market. I know I can't wait for the videos to come out. Like, I sit there glued to YouTube and go, oh, Street Machine, let's watch this. Like, yeah, talk us through how it just came, well, it's come about, but just pure luck or...
Well, I think it's Scotty's experience when, like, he started shooting video before it was digital. So he was shooting on tape.
Yeah.
So he's got all that years of experience before we even started, before this was a thing. I think that stood us in really good stead. And then just dedicating the resource to it, going, Scott, you don't need to work in the magazine, 5 days a week anymore. You just go and do this video thing as much as you can, and we'll give you whatever support we can. And yeah, you've got to put the time in it. Video is so time intensive. You can't half-ass it.
Yeah, the other part of it is like, yes, you got to film the stuff, but you actually got to build the cars as well. And that's what people don't understand. It's like they think, there's this team behind me of 10 people or whatever, as you said. But yeah, we're filming this stuff, but at times we've got to puzzle through and actually make this shit happen. And, it gets insane. It gets intense. Like we did that Mr. Dodgy Phoenix to take to the Running on Empty cruise up at Cobar. And again, that was just one of those cars that, like it probably is a little bit underappreciated in the Carnage viewership. It probably didn't get the numbers that we were hoping, but it did all right. And it was just a rolling project, 63 Phoenix that we found at an auction site. We picked it up really cheap.
It's like $1,200 or something.
Yeah, it was really
like it had no motor.
Yeah.
But it had no rust in it. That's the thing. It was a 1963 car with not a skerrick of rust in it. And I'm like, this thing is amazing. Yeah, let's get it, put a 440 in it. And then, the Running on Empty cruise popped up, run by our mate, Benny Hewlett. And with Benny, we're going to take this car up there. So, again, it was one of those things. We finished it that morning and, jumped in it and drove it. Or was it 900 Ks each way to Cobar, through the kangaroos and the whole thing? And it was just an amazing cruise to take that up.
Well, you made it about 5 Ks.
Oh,
and then another 5 Ks.
Yeah.
And then another 5 Ks.
Yeah, the electronic ignition, the ballast resistor crapped out on us, and it would heat up and then go open circuit every couple of Ks. And until I'm trying to chase it. Like I had the fuel tank out of the car at one point on the side of the road. I had the fuel tank out of the car, trying to puzzle through why this thing keeps dying every couple of Ks. And then I looked at the ignition. I'm like, hang on, I've got a ballast resistor in this, but it's got electronic ignition, like a built-in MSD module and I'm like, I don't even need a ballast resistor for this thing. Disconnect, bang, and she didn't stop. It just kept going. Like, we were almost ready to pull the pin on the entire trip. We got to that point. We'd stopped 8 times or something before we got out of Melbourne. Yeah. And I was ready to just go, you know what? I'm going to park this thing, and who cares if anyone steals it? They're not going to get far. And we, but yeah, once we fixed the ballast resistor issue, it didn't stop, And but that's cars, and people. I do cop a little bit of flack from people going, oh, God, you guys screw a lot of things up. I'm like, hello, have you ever had anything to do with cars? Like, this happens to everyone.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Exactly, 100%.
And it's we always push it to the time-wise because we've got other stuff to do. This isn't something we do, even though Scotty dedicates most of his time to it. Yeah, it's not a full-time thing where we're working on the cars. There's editing and shooting and all the other stuff. So it's always to the last minute. It's always just together. So there's always going to be dramas. But the great thing about that project is it shows you could build a big block American 60s car for pretty cheap. Like, what do we reckon we spent on that?
I think at Otis, honestly, I think it was like 2025 at the end, which, like, it sounds like a lot of money for an old Dodge, but not really. When you're talking about big block American body car, that's not actually a lot of money, So
good.
That's a new motor, new trans, all new brake. That was like new wheels, tires. We put all new suspension in it. Like it was a bit of a we bust our asses to get it done in time, but it's such a fun car, and I'm kind of. I'm still sad that it's parked up the back of the shed, the Carnage garage, because we did a cam swap at Motorex a year ago. Was it a year ago or 2 years now? It's been a while since there's been a Motorex, isn't it? We did a cam swap at Motorex, and it all went well until we fired it up, and it was running good, and then it died halfway back to the workshop. And we found that, and this is something that happens a lot, and it's happened to the roadkill guys a couple of times as well too. It happens a lot these days with flat tappet cams. They grind the lobes off, and it happens, because there's not the zinc in the oil that there used to be, and the lobes all came off the cam, and went all through the motor. So we've got to put we got to sort of pull the 440. We've pulled the 440 down. We just got to get around to putting it back together. But it's a bit of a shame because we put aluminium heads in it, a hot cam, and this thing it sounded amazing until it didn't.
True that.
Well, speaking of putting engines together and the real technical stuff, I want to just change it up a little bit. I'm going to say a couple of names here. Bob Copmell, William Porker, Mark Arblaster, Victor Bray. Look, and I'm sure I've missed a number of regular contributors there that have regular columns in the magazine. But correct me if I'm wrong, Bob's been there since day one or very close to day one?
He may even go back to the Van Wheels days. He went off and went to Performance Streetcar for a while when Parra was running Performance Streetcar. But Bob has been there for a very long time. We've had to put pause on his column for a while during COVID. The same for Victor because, times are tough and we've just had to rationalise what we do for a while. But they're a very big part of the magazine and so much knowledge, and people write to us all the time saying, "Can Bob tell me how to fix this?" or "What does Bob think about that?" And he's always happy to help people.
Nice guy too. Bob is such a nice guy. He's just a real gentleman. I love Bob. And he loves drag challenge too. He loves coming down like when drag challenge is on. Bob will just rock up. We won't even know he's coming, and he'll just rock up down there. He rode his bike from up there and way up in Queensland. And he'll just ride down and come and check out drag challenge, and you'll turn around and Bob's there, and you're like, "Hey, Bob, how you going?" He's like, he's just such a nice guy, not full of himself or anything like that. He's just, he's been around forever too, and you get some of those guys that have been around a long time, and they like to let you know. Bob's not the guy. Bob is such a gentleman,
Those names that I just read out, they're when they put pen to paper, Bob, William, Mark, Victor, when they put pen to paper and write a column, you can take that as gospel, can't you? Because I've never once questioned anything. They're probably some of the most reputable people in our industry, aren't they? And when you read something from them, you take that as gospel. Yeah, look,
William Porker, his real name is Noel Tuckey. His brother was the editor of Wheels magazine for a long time.
Yep.
But Noel has been a mechanic like before Moses was a boy, and has seen and done everything, and until very recently, still worked on vintage race cars. And the knowledge of this guy, and it goes back to that time when if you couldn't go down the shops and go to the speed shop and buy a bearing for this, or or a bracket for that or whatever. They just made everything and just could fabricate everything. And that kind of knowledge is amazing. And we work with a lot of really smart young guys, really young, Adam at MPW and Zane at Max. They're young fellas. They're not even 30 yet, I don't think.
Well, Adam is just over, he's kind of early 30s. Zane is under 30. And they're amazing talents, and their knowledge is just. And Zane's knowledge on barrows is unparalleled. There's no doubt about it. And same with Adam with LSs and just performance cars in general. Adam is an amazing car builder. I mean, he's built some killer cars, and these guys, as Simon said, they're not I'm 50. Simon's just not quite 50. So we're old.
I guess where I was going with that is these guys are very talented, but they have access to technology, gear and parts that Noel and Victor, when Victor started and Bob started, could not have dreamed of. You think when Victor put his 57 together with nitrous first, he used nitrous from a guy called Bob Hamilton in Queensland. He's an industrial chemist. He makes flavors for like KFC and stuff
What
like
was it
that.
about Queenslanders and industrial chemists? Well,
Yeah,
chemists.
we were laughed at, didn't we?
Not that kind of chemistry. Anyway,
Yeah.
he was really into drag racing. He invented one of the first traction compounds that was on the market, and then the first nitrous systems. And yeah, Victor used to, being a farmer, used to leave boxes and boxes of veggies on this guy's doorstep to pay for the nitrous that he was using.
Yeah.
He just, put it on the bill, and you're paying back in veggies. But they had obviously had speed shops back there, but nothing like we had now. And you certainly couldn't, get parts overnight from the States or
Yeah.
Yeah.
down now. And so the welders we have now, and the gear that, like the amazing fabrication that Adam and his crew do,
Mhm.
you couldn't do that back in the day without the gear that we have today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Most
look at-
certainly.
Look at this thing behind me. I mean, the welder that I'm using now from Heron Forbes is just amazing. And it's not like a mega dollar deal. Now, I had a cheap, like an inexpensive sort of home welding setup that I bought way back in the day. And it was a piece of crap. Like, I spent good money on it, but it was kind of like, this is what you need for, working on cars at home. And I couldn't do crap with that. This thing, like, I'm confident enough that I'm replacing quarters. I'm doing mini tubs right now in this thing. Like, the welders are so good now, and it gives me confidence to actually get in there and do it. And I'm not a professional by any means. So,
Yeah.
if I can do it, pretty much anyone can do it, to be honest.
Yep.
I do get that a lot from a lot of guys, like, oh, you've inspired me to go off and do this. And sometimes I go, oh, geez, what have I done? So, yeah.
But that's a good
Certainly.
thing, Scotty. I mean, I think that's it doesn't matter. I think that's a good thing, no matter what. If your magazine or your media has the ability to inspire people and do stuff like this, I can't see that being a bad thing at all.
No,
Cool.
no, it's a good hobby, and it's a good way to involve your family. It's a great sport for that.
Yeah.
If you can grow up amongst cars and going to race meetings or going out on cruises and hanging out with other car families, I think that's an awesome way to grow up.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Well, a couple more questions for you guys. One that was one of my first questions that I wrote out. I put it near the end of the interview. Was like, give us both of you. Give us your favourite. It might be difficult to answer this one, but give us your favourite street machine of the year, if you can.
I'll go first because I know my answer. So it's Colin Townsend's FJ Holden, and I'm a bit biased. I'm an FJ Holden guy. If you don't know that car, it's black. It has pumped guards. I don't mean flared guards. I mean widened like that. The wheels on them, I think they were fitted to the current model Lamborghini at the time, so super wide. I think it had 3-piece Simmons on it, and was built like a sports sedan. So stroked Holden V8, quad Webers set right back, like halfway into the cabin. Big recessed firewall, top loader, massive. Like the seats you sit further back in the car. I've driven the car. I've been really fortunate to have driven that particular car, and it was the first Pro Tourer, or one of the first Pro Tourers. There's a few guys who had that idea that you don't have to build a drag-inspired street machine. You can do a circuit-inspired street machine. So Craig Parker with Tough XY, Mark Sanders with his cars, Trina Monaro, and this FJ were amongst the first ones. You can make a car that stops and goes and handles, and that's what Colin Townsend's FJ was. And I've driven the thing, and it is like FJs are made out of cat food tins. They are very flimsy old cars that had 100 horsepower or 130 horsepower, maybe not even. I can't remember.
I think you're upselling them, mate. I don't think
Yeah.
that.
I don't think they were that much.
No, that 132 cubes.
Yeah.
But to make one that is like virtually a race car with number plates is a massive achievement, especially back in the early 90s. He's one of the pioneers of sort of CAD design, and getting at that time, South Australian rego was a bit like WA rego, super hard to get wild cars engineered, but those boys got it done. So yeah, that's absolutely one of my favorites. But I've got to love Adam Labrese's EH, being a Holden guy. Another amazing car. Like, he's talk about guys inspired just to have a go. He was a Bobcat driver and a skateboarder and a dirt bike guy. His missus was studying she ended up being a principal, I think high school principal, and she was studying, and he was annoying her, and she was like, "Go and do something." So he restored an EH first, and then he got the taste for cars, and had never touched a spanner before, never touched a welder before, and then started reading about Chip Foose and Troy Trepanier, and built that EH delivery in his backyard in far north Queensland, painted it in his backyard, and won Street Machine of the Year, and set him off on a whole different career. So
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen, Scotty. Watch out. You might inspire.
I don't know if I didn't get to this stage, but Tough XY, Craig's Tough XY, it was always something like, especially like that late 80s, and just seeing a car like that where you're seeing so many drag-inspired cars come through the magazine. And I love drag racing, don't get me wrong, I'm a drag racer. But seeing a car like Craig's Tough XY, those amazing fat custom wheels on them, the pump guards, and just that brilliant red colour. It was just such a brilliant, fantastic car. I just loved it. And, not even knowing that, later on in life, I would actually become friends with Craig Parker. We're mates, so it's crazy, how life goes. And it's just one of those things. But it's always been a car I've been super appreciative of. I loved the build of it, and how different and groundbreaking the car was at the time. Just people weren't building cars like that, and that's why I think Craig won that, pretty convincingly. It's just an amazing car.
Yeah, but you guys.
Well, it's an interesting question you asked, because I wrote down here, for my pick was actually Craig Parker's XY, Tough XY, was actually my number 2. My number 1, actually, and I'm a Ford man, but my number 1 was Al Bundy Lucas's HQ Monaro. Yeah. I just think that really, when that came out, that really left a mark on me personally. And I still think that's number 1. But Craig's XY, because I'm a Ford man, I think as well, that's a strong number 2 for me. At my 21st, I actually had that. You put photos of yourself. I actually put Craig Parker's XY.
That's awesome.
I actually had that printed in A3, and that was the centerpiece. Even it wasn't even my car, but people that knew me knew that I was a Ford man, and I had Craig Parker's XY front and center at my 21st. So
fantastic.
But to me, Al Bundy Lucas's HQ for certain.
So for myself, I was actually trying to find the magazine, but I couldn't find it. I'm going to go back. It was probably the late 90s, early 2000s. There was a VK Calais, actually owned by a school teacher. It was in the VL Midnight Blue, and he'd smoothed all the lines out of it. I remember it clearly. I can remember it, the photo of it in my head. And I remember that, again, he apparently started from almost nowhere and just started building this VK. And now it's actually making me want to try and find a VK. I think I've missed my window, unfortunately. But I can see it stuck out to me. I can see the picture in my head. I can see it driving down that road, all the lines taken out. He took the rain gutter guards out. Like, it was just lots of body work, but it worked. Like, it looked amazing and stood out. And I haven't really seen anything since. So that for me was the standout. Also, anything Valiant Chrysler, anything Charger, pretty much for me is, hey Charger.
Well,
there you go.
You guys know Cassie Rhodes over there?
Yeah.
So Cassie came very close to winning Street Machine of the Year in her E55 one year. We have had one female Street Machine of the Year winner, which was Angela Dow's LX hatch. But Cassie came pretty close.
Yeah.
That's an awesome car, and she still takes her kids to school in it. Every once in a while.
No, it is a magnificent car. Speaking of those, our co-host, I'll preface this question. Our co-host Simon Travellini, he's unable to compete in a blown vehicle on a Wednesday night. In essence, do you think the quintessential street machine is no longer a blown vehicle? And if so, what is the quintessential street machine?
I think still it's quintessentially the blown car is when you think street machine, you think 671, 871 through the bonnet, that is quintessential street machine. But I mean, when it comes to actually fast street cars now, twin turbos, they're all the way, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
look at how many amazing twin turbo cars there are now and how many seriously fast, 7-second street cars there are. I mean, you got John Ferrone over there. His charge is amazing, done drag week 7 times.
Eddie Tassoni as well.
Eddie Tassoni, he's done some amazing Commodore stuff. Like that gold car from way back, when it was on the cover of the magazine, and just, I used to be there. I was working with Street Commodores at the time that he was winning Horsepower Heroes over here at Summernats. So I'd be there, standing there like 10 feet from the car when it's on the dyno with the video camera filming that for Street Commodores videos. Yeah. And you'll see some of the Street Machine coverage of that car back then, and you'll see Scotty standing there with a video camera filming all that, and I'm there in the middle of the Street Machine pictures. So,
Look, I think in terms of like whether, who should be allowed to race on Wednesday night, I think, they've got to pick, doesn't matter what engine it is, if their cutoff is 10 seconds or 9 seconds or 7 seconds, just, pick a cutoff and go with it. It's up to, it doesn't really matter whether it's turbo or blown. Yeah. But look, they just had Red Senate at Snell Springs, and the grand champion of that was a EH Holden, and it's pretty much like a regular street car, except it has a blown 870 blown small block on E85. He can drive that car to the shops. He uses it for formals and things like that. Runs 10 flats, and to win grand champion, you've got to drag it, you've got to motor corner it, you've got to grass drive it, and he just smashed all those in this car, and it just hop in, out, doesn't get hot, throw the keys to anybody. And so, I think, a blown car can be still totally relevant. And we have them on Drag Challenge. We've had at least 2 or 3 on Drag Challenge that do all of Drag Challenge with a 671 through the bonnet. Yeah. Cops don't even look at them. Some guys have blowers, take them off, race, put them back on. But, if you got the balls to do it, why not?
Yeah. Clive Polidano with his blue HZ Holden, 671 through the bonnet, the entire Drag Challenge. And he's the nicest, happiest guy, or he's smiling the entire time. Like, Drag Challenge is hard. There is no doubt about it. And Clive has just got a smile from ear to ear the entire week, driving around with a 671 out of his bonnet. It's just amazing. Such a cool thing.
Yeah.
And So there's still a place for blown cars. There's no doubt about it. It's a little bit harder than it was. There's no doubt. But let's face it, it's never really been easy for blown cars.
No.
That's what makes it cool.
That's exactly right.
Phil Rollotta and his LC Tirana, the Raging Bull Tirana. It's like, if you've got the balls to drive a basically a wild bunch car on the street, well, more power to you.
Yeah, that's right. How about you guys? What do you guys have?
Well, obviously this one is actually one of mine. This isn't actually a Carnage car. It's like we do it for Carnage, but this is my car. And then I've got another wagon that I've just pushed outside, a Hemi 6 wagon that I pushed outside. So give me a bit more room in here today. I've also got another Valiant Ute that my father left me that before he passed away. So it's in the Carnage workshop at the moment, and it's getting a really tough little 318 small block. So, I play with everything, Holden Ford and whatever, but my passion is these kind of late 60s, early 70s Valiants, So.
Yep. Oh, it's cool. We're still recording, so I haven't hit the stop button yet, actually. So it's no big deal. This can go in. I can make it sound like it was part of the podcast. No drama there.
No, I'm a Holden guy, so I've got a HZ1 tonner, and I've got my EJ Holden, which unfortunately had a big prang a couple of years ago. So that's kind of very, very sad. I'm kind of too traumatized to do anything with it, so it's just sitting there while I think about what to do. And I've got an old Triumph motorbike, like a 71 Trumpy.
Oh, awesome.
And a drag race and FX Holden when I get to Queensland. My old man owns that, like it's a gasser type thing.
Yep.
But what my true love is the Renault Clio, which is our budget little thing we built or sort of got for Kian, so Kian could have his own project as a bit of a They have a series here called the Nugget Nationals, which is for 1.5 and under little shitters, just as a real budget motorsport. And yeah, when he's not racing that, I drive that every day, and it's a great little roller skate. I love it.
Okay.
Nice.
That is,
Yeah.
they're pretty cool, the little Clios. Yeah.
We don't have to, it's like, no, it's a car you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
It's like, if it gets stolen, who cares? If it gets rolled in, who cares? We cost us very little to buy, and has been, for a French car, has been very reliable. Has been
right.
done lap after lap after lap with young Ken behind the wheel, and is hanging in there.
Hey, look, guys, I know it's getting late over there, so we'll wrap this one up. I know it's 9 p.m. over there, and we really appreciate you taking your own time to do this interview. Just quickly, Street Machine Magazine, available. Now, this is the other thing, available at every single outlet Australia-wide. I don't know, I've never been to somewhere that sells magazines that doesn't have Street Machine. So if they sell magazines, they got Street Machine, pretty
Generally.
much. Yeah. Yeah, I've never, especially in Western Australia, I can vouch for that. So every month, you head to your news agents or retailer as well and get your Street Machine magazine. Now, your digital content, that's available at www.whichcar.com.au. That's a great platform as well, I must say. Is that still Bauer Media?
Yeah, we got bought out. We've got new owners. This is probably my fourth set of owners.
Yep.
The time I've been there. So we've got owned by an Australian company now, which is really good, called Mercury Capital. So we're going to have a new name. We haven't got a new name yet, but it is coming.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter. Street Machine stays the same. It just gets more and more tentacles spread out more and more across the internet.
Yeah. And for those people that are listening to us, head to that website because it is an amazing website. It's not just Street Machine. There's a whole lot of other publications there and a whole lot of content if you are looking at buying a new car as well. I think it's an absolutely great website. You've done a magnificent job there. Okay, guys. Well, look, thanks for your time. We'll let you wrap this one up, and we really appreciate your time on coming on the podcast.
Mate, we were stoked to be invited. It was awesome. We love your show, and we love listening to Boris the other day, and that was really, really, really cool. So yeah, thanks for having us.
No dramas. All right, guys. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
thanks,
thank you.
Scotty. Thanks, Telfo. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Say good day to Simon. I hope he feels better.
Yeah, no, we will do. Thanks for that.
No worries.
Your motorsport and motoring radio show, podcasting across iTunes and talkandpower.com.au.